Good day and welcome to the CFP Board-Registered Programs Spring 2014 update. I'm Dr. Charles Chaffin, Director of Academic Programs and Initiatives at CFP Board, and pleased to have you present for today's webinar. We've got a lot of very important issues to discuss today, so I'm certainly glad you're with us. We're going to talk about one portion of the renewal process. We'll certainly talk about the institutional reports and the Certification Completion Initiative, which are going to be disseminated tomorrow. We'll talk about the upcoming Firms Night at the Registered Program Conference, a couple of points about the move to computer-based testing, and then talk about a few research studies before I get to your question. So let's go ahead and get started. Biennial renewals, as you know, we in 2013 moved to the self-evaluation process for our programs, and that's gone very, very well. But one point that kind of going back to the capstone course that has been a challenge is programs following the requirements for the financial plan development course requirements. So they're still the same as they were in 2012. The learning objectives, the 7 learning objectives, must be present and part of that course. They've got to be in the course syllabi. They have to be assessed in an assessment rubric. We don't get into how you weight your rubric or the structure. I've got some sample rubrics on the registered programs page that you're certainly welcome to look at. But there needs to be a systematic assessment of those 7 learning objectives in some sort of rubric, and then 45 contact hours. This has been, and the reason why I'm bringing it up today is just because we've had a number of programs that have not, that I haven't been able to renew because for whatever reason. I think the biggest reason probably is that there's been some sort of faculty turnover in this capstone course, and the faculty member has not followed suit with the requirements. They've changed the syllabus and whatnot, and I haven't been able to approve the course and thus the program. Now, if you have, and many of you do, you have 2 or 3 other LOs that you want to include because you think they're really important and part of your program, then you're free to do that. But those 7 have to be in the course, and they have to be assessed for and consist of 45 contact hours. All of the webinars that I did and when we launched this course, and all of the supplemental materials and criteria, those are all at that web page that's listed here. If you don't know about that page, I encourage you to look at it and share it with your faculty, by the way, and make sure that they're aware of it, because we really do try to do a lot with resources beyond just criteria, and so please take advantage of it. We really want you to. So the big news, of course, well, there's lots of big news, but this is the biggest news, certainly for this week, is the Certification Completion Initiative. And we announced this at the conference in August. I mentioned it again at the webinar in the fall. I mentioned it again at the webinar in January. And here we are. The reports are going to start. We will start disseminating these reports tomorrow. So all institutions will receive an individual report on April 30th for each of their registered programs. And it will go to the program director and the chief academic officer, whoever you have listed in the program as the chief academic officer. Those are the folks that are going to get it. It has primary contact listed on here. The primary contact will not get it. It will just be the program director and the chief academic officer. And I'm going to get into this chart in just a second. It's important to note that this is valid. It's basically the time period is the beginning of 2012 to present. If you remember, that is when we required institutions to submit the names of their graduates to CFP Board. So it's based upon the list that you are sending to us. So here's a look at the report that you're going to get. And essentially, this is going to have the upload, the percentage of students who have an account who've been uploaded, the individuals who've sat for the exam, passed the exam, which is not a exam pass rate, and then the percentage that have been certified. So there's a cover sheet which I didn't share today, which you're going to get tomorrow, that defines every one of these terms. And it's defined in such a way, I wrote it for your deans. I'll be really honest with you. You all can look at those things and you have a really good understanding of all those variables. I see all of you that are on this webinar right now, and I know you know what all those things mean, but I wrote it for your administrators so that they have an understanding of what each one of these variables mean, and that it's an initial report. So one of the things that's not on this example is that the idea that it's an initial report. And the reason why we say it's initial is because it's only going from 2012. So it's going to give you some glimpse of how your graduates are doing relative to certification, but it's certainly not going to be comprehensive because it's only been a couple of years. But as we get distance from that 2012 point, it's going to start to take on more meaning. So if you would like to submit names prior to 2012, we'll have a form developed that'll outline a way for you to do so. So for example, we have to get through this initial report, but if you come back and say, gosh, this is so helpful to us, which that's the whole idea. We want it to be helpful to you. We want it to be helpful to CFP Board and to your students. We share this objective. But if you decide, in a couple of weeks, we want to go back further than that, we'll help you with that. We'll look at that. You can email registeredprograms@cfpboard.org, and we'll try to accommodate that. You're going to have all the names. I mean, if you're trying to do something for some sort of internal evaluation on your campus, you can't send in half of the names. If you want to go from 2010 to present, then you have to have all those graduates there, obviously, for that report and that effort to be worthwhile. But nevertheless, we'll work with you on that. Are you submitting all the names of all your program graduates? So this has come up a few times where some faculty are saying, well, we're submitting names of the students that we think are going to move on with certification. Well, then your numbers are going to reflect that. And it's really important that you submit all of the names. Now, we are certainly going to make sure that we are following FERPA guidelines for privacy. This is what the Department of Ed calls directory information that you're sending us. So we have a whole bunch of different options regarding the type of data that you can send in to make sure that it matches. But so there's no reason not to send those names in and move forward. And then there's obviously a form. Some institutions I know are a little bit more guarded, even though it's not a FERPA issue, they're even more guarded. So we developed a form that you could disseminate to your students to get their information and to disseminate it and move forward. In subsequent renewals, beginning with next year, this document will be part of it. So what we will do is we will ask, how do you plan on improving your numbers? What strategies do you have? That could be employer engagement, engaging employers that are going to support your students in finishing certification. It could be all kinds of different induction strategies and things like that. We are not setting a uniform baseline. So in that chart that I showed you, you have 2 bars for each one of those variables. One is your score relative to your program, and then the other is the national average relative to your program type. So if you're getting data for a certificate program, then you're going to have the national average next to it for the certificate programs. We really believe that programs they're different. They have all kinds of different objectives and challenges and opportunities. And so it doesn't make sense, particularly at this early stage, that we say, a baccalaureate program should be minimum at this standard or they're going to get dinged on their renewal. That's not useful. So a better approach for us as we work together on this is to essentially take what the stance that an accreditor would take, and that is, how do you plan on improving your scores? And how do you plan on engaging? Now, one thing I should mention, and I don't want to go back to this. So the 2 points there, the passed exam, which is not the pass rate, because this is just going to be from 2012 on, they could have taken the exam a number of times and finally passed and moved into that category. And that's explicit in the document that you're going to get. But the 2 variables at the end, the passed exam and the ever certified, those are very indirect variables of program quality. So we've never held our programs accountable relative to those last two variables. But what we are hoping that we can collaborate is looking at matching an account and sitting for the exam. Now, the first point of the bar, it just says the total number of students that are being submitted. But the matching the account and sitting for the exam, we starting in 2013, we asked all of our programs, we asked all of our programs to state how they were going to encourage their students to set up an account, and that's what that matching CFP account is. And then sitting for the exam, encouraging students to go on with certification. So what's important here, there's a couple really important things that I hope you take away from this. The first thing is that we're not holding our partner institutions accountable with regard to passed exam or certified. They're very, very, very indirect variables. And the second point is we want to get this data together regarding matching the account and sitting for the exam and see where we are and improve it and work together on it. So when I say getting dinged on a review, the only way that's going to happen is if an institution has very, very low scores, particularly in matching an account and sitting for the exam, and in their self-assessment they come back and say, well, we don't have any strategies for either of those things and we're not going to work to improve it. That's going to be a problem. But what we want to see is we see our scores are low, we're going to try this, this, and this. We're going to work more with professional practice. We're going to encourage students to make sure they have an account earlier in their program of study, all those types of things. And I'm looking at this list of attendees. A lot of you are already doing these things. And so we just see this as a great variable, a great opportunity to really define where we are with our graduates. And I've heard from probably close to 50 or 60 institutions since we announced this, saying we're thrilled to get this data, and we're certainly thrilled to provide it, and we're certainly thrilled to work together on improving it. Looking at the numbers, they're low in a lot of different cases, and so I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do together to move forward. So switching gears, although certainly related, is this idea of induction and going from the program into employment. In a lot of cases, in some of our certificate programs, students are already employed. But one of the things that we're doing this year at the Registered Program Conference is a Firms Night. This is the first time we've ever done this in bringing in a variety of different firms to engage you all, our partner institutions, about developing partnerships that are going to help everyone. So what this will be, instead of having for those of you that have attended regularly, we always do a reception on the first night, which is the Thursday night. We're getting rid of that reception and instead having this Firms Night where there'll be meetings between firms and you all to discuss potential partnership options. What will happen is that once we get closer to a relatively concrete guest list, we will send out the names of the firms that are attending. And we will ask those of you that are registered to attend to pick your top 5 choices for meeting with these firms. We will do our best to accommodate those, and then you'll have a 20 to 30 minute meeting with that firm to talk about ways of collaborating. Now, the caveat, of course, is we've never done this. So we don't have an idea of what our numbers are going to be like. We certainly think that our colleges and universities are going to be excited about this. I've heard from many of you that you are, and we think the firms are going to be excited about this because they want your students. And I think there's some great opportunities that for all three of our organizations, the firms, programs, and CFP board, there's some great opportunities to develop some real strategies that are going to benefit everyone. So I put on here meetings will last approximately 20, 30 minutes. We're going to need to see what the numbers are like and to figure out exactly what that's going to be. But the objective here is that this isn't just going to be a meet and greet over cocktails, but this is going to be some real deliberative discussion about ways of partnering and working together for everyone's benefit. So how do you prepare for this? Well, I think you need to come, and I should say, I did a webinar with our Director of Firm Relations, Joe Mageri, earlier in April to talk with the firms about how to prepare for this, because we want everyone to get the most out of it. Your time is important, their time is important, our time is important, so let's make the most of it. So what I would suggest is bringing documentation relative to your program objectives. And, you know, this one, in a lot of cases, going back and looking at program objectives wouldn't be a bad thing for everybody anyway. So 27% of our programs, this is an aside, 27% of our programs in the last 2 years have required significant curricular rewrites. And one of the things that has come from that, as I've spoken with the faculty administration, is what are your objectives? Why are you doing this? And it's a great opportunity to go back and look at that and re-articulate it as a faculty and as a division or department or whatnot. But I really think you need to have those stated for something like this. If you're thinking, you know, maybe we have the opportunity to develop some significant resources with firms and think about some significant ideas that are going to help the sustainability of the program, I think you need to say, why are you offering this program? And you don't want to just say, obviously, well, we want future CFPs. I mean, we know that, that's great, but I think it needs to be more than that, right? You know, we envision this specific student profile, and we see the CFP as important, but we're also about all kinds of different other things. I'm happy to speak with you about that as you get closer to preparing, but I think it's an important point. Region served, where are your graduates going right now? And which firms would it make the most sense for you to engage? And that's going to come up as you decide who you're going to meet with, and we'll try to accommodate that. I mean, if you're in the middle of Nevada, then it makes really good sense for you to be thinking about those states that are going to be on the borders and not meeting with an East Coast firm. And we're going to try to accommodate that as best we can. But having an idea where your graduates are going, I think, is really important. And then I wrote competencies beyond CFP Board requirements, and that kind of goes back to the objectives, right? So, for example, you know, we have programs that are housed in agricultural economics, and in some of those programs, you know, they see the CFP as somebody that's also going to be serving small business. So they have a bigger focus in that area. I think you should articulate that. If you're doing that, I think it's great. And some of you, depending upon where your programs are housed in specific colleges or departments, you might have a different focus, and I think you should accentuate that. We at CFP Board support that. We don't want 361 of the same programs, and I think it's important for you to go ahead and articulate what you believe and what you think is important as a department. So some strategy, right? So considering what you're willing to offer firms before the conversation starts. What are you looking, what would you be able to offer them? Would you be able to offer them a seat on your advisory board? Would you be willing to offer them some sort of opportunity for engaging graduates? And I don't know if it would necessarily be exclusive or not, but would you be willing to offer a course? I mean, what if a firm offered you a check for $2 million and said, we need a practice management course? Would you be willing to do it? And would it fit, going back to your program objectives, would it fit what you're looking to do? And for some of you, I think you would probably take that money and make it happen. And for some of you, you wouldn't, because for a lot of different reasons. And there's no right or wrong answer from our perspective. There certainly isn't a right or wrong answer. But I think you need to be ready to talk about that. And then what do you want from them? What exactly is it that you're looking for? Now, resources, of course, is the #1 category. You know, what I would say to that is, what does it cost to get access to your graduates? And I've been speaking with a lot of you about this over the last probably year or so, and I think we need to be thinking about that in your best interest from a program sustainability perspective. Is access to your graduates equivalent to guest speaking at a course? Or is it going to be more than that? Is it going to be a significant contribution? What is it? What does it look like? I already mentioned advisory board participation. Career tracking is really important, and all of you know this. I don't have to tell you. You know, this idea of, okay, if you're going to hire our graduates, and I'm going to use the baccalaureate programs as an example here, what are they going to be doing in year 2, you know, in year 3? If things are going well, how's this mentorship and induction going to work? Maybe they're not going to be engaging clients at all in year one, but what about year two? And why is this a good step for us to work together with your program, with your business model, with what career track that you're presenting? And obviously supportive CFP certification. So this goes back to the reports that you're going to be getting this week. You know, that as everybody on this webinar knows, that the employer of your graduates has a significant impact on whether they complete certification or not, and it's certainly something to think about as you're going forward. And then obviously, how do you develop action items? So we don't want this thing to die on the vine. We want to see this this conversation to continue, and we want to be a part of it. I'm happy to help in helping prepare. You know, contact Pablo to set up a time for us to have a conference call, and I'm happy to speak with you to help you prepare for it. We're on the same page here. Our success is dependent upon yours, and so we're happy to help. But we don't want this just to be a great meet and greet. You guys spend all this time to get ready for it, and then nothing happens after. So it's something to think about before we get there. So just talking about the conference, it's August 7th and 8th here in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to mention this while I'm thinking about it. If you have, I keep hearing from programs that are saying, well, our faculty don't know about this and don't know about that. And we want your faculty to know about this, that, and the other, right? So if you've got faculty that you want on our mailing list, contact registered programs at cfpboard.org and we'll add them. We do not take the liberty of taking emails off of the syllabi that you're sending us. We just don't do that. But we would like to reach all of your faculty, and I think it would be for everyone's benefit. So if you've got names, submit them. And that goes the same way with if you've got Career Center contacts that you want us to engage, give us those names and emails. I asked all of our programs for that last year, and we got 30. And I go visit campuses, and they talk about these high percentages of undeclared students and whatnot, and I'm kind of befuddled by that. You know, we'll help you engage them, but we need their names and their email addresses. So send us those names and emails, and we'll engage them. Same thing on that was more of a comment on the degree side. On the non-degree side, we have a lot of adjunct faculty, and we'd be happy to engage them. I think it's really important because we do a lot of resource work. We certainly do. I spend a lot of time on that web page providing resources to help everybody get better at what they do. So send us names. So, okay, outside of that aside, so the conference is coming up, the 7th and 8th. This year's theme is awareness, education, and induction, and that's kind of, you know, talking awareness at that very beginning stage where they're not aware of your program and the opportunities associated with it. Education is that they're in the program, and induction really speaks to after it. Induction as a CFP, if they're already working and they're in your program and they're just getting CFP certification, or induction that they're moving into the profession entirely. And Firms Night is certainly a representative of that induction piece. So sessions outlining trends and programs. As always, experiential learning in the classroom or online learning platform will be part of it. And then obviously partnering with firms has more to do with the Firms Night. We're doing a lot of large group sessions this year because we have a lot to talk about. We have the WIN initiative. We have the CCI reports that are coming out tomorrow, as I've mentioned, and the Firms Night. We're going to do a Firms panel. So there won't be a large number of concurrent sessions, and I've already gotten a good sense that there are quite a few proposals. That shouldn't stop you from sending one in. We want to see them, and the deadline's tomorrow, by the way. But we won't have as many concurrent sessions this year. But please feel free to send to submit. So conference. So just the structure. Obviously, given the fact that we're the call for proposals out, I don't have an agenda, but I can tell you conference will begin at 3:30 on Thursday the 7th and run until 4 Friday the 8th. It could be that we'll start at 4 and just do a total of 24 hours, 4 to 4, but I think blocking out 3:30 to 4 makes a lot of sense. Call for proposals as I mentioned, ends on April 30th, which is tomorrow. And visit cfp.net/conference for you if you want to look at the call for proposals. I don't have up there. It should have up there. I should have included the call for posters for graduate students. We'll still be doing that on that Thursday evening, and then obviously to register for the conference and information to get a room booked for the hotel. It is a packed conference this year. We keep adding more and more things to it. Moving it to a one-day cut cost, but I'll tell you it's a challenge because there's lots of information that we're sharing, and we definitely want to make sure everybody gets 8 hours of sleep that night. So we won't cut into that, but we're getting close. That we've almost outgrown the time frame. So let's move on here. Talk about computer-based testing for just a little bit. As you know, CFP Board announced the move to computer-based testing, which will begin with the November 2014 exam. Examinees should register I say as soon as possible, as early as possible in the time frame, and I'll tell you when registration is going to open up for the November exam in just a second. But the reason why they should do it as soon as possible is so that they can get their first choice of exam date and location. So the difference is now that there's a window, right, where the exam's going to be offered in about 400 different locations, and so registering early is going to help them get that spot. Now, this second bullet point is really, really important. So we're going to allow examinees to schedule their exams in advance of meeting the education completion date, okay? The verification deadline will be about 30 days prior to when the exam window opens, but the idea is here, a student might be in the middle of a capstone course and have a couple weeks left, and they'll be finished by the time the verification deadline comes. They can go ahead and schedule their exam. Now, if they don't make it, and this happens, it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen, where someone, calls us and says, well, we're probably going to be done, and we haven't accepted it in the past, but here, if they don't make it, then they won't be able to take it. They will not be able to take the exam. They'll be removed from the eligibility list. And one of the things that I think will provide further guidance going forward is whether there's going to be some sort of penalty for that, because we pay for the seats, and so we have to be real careful from a cost perspective. If somebody doesn't make it, they're probably going to get a refund, but they may pay a small fee relative to that. And we will flesh that out further for you as we get closer to this deadline. And then the third point, of course, is big, right? The examinees will receive results and diagnostics at the testing site, with the caveat that they may not become, quote, official until after the window finishes. That's a huge change from what we've done before, that we'll be able to provide results a lot sooner than what we've been doing in the past with paper and pencil tests. So November registration is targeted to open on June 3rd. We'll be sending all kinds of information to you in the next several weeks regarding the move to CBT. But that's a date that you could kind of circle and publicize to your students. Your students having an account with us will certainly help us in communicating with them regarding some of the changes that are naturally going to come with CBT. So all these things are really important, and we're doing a better job and are going to continue to improve in our communication with students who are registered with us and providing value to them of having a free account. So it's really, really important. If you have information, if you need more information right now regarding it, I would say you're going to get a lot more information from us in the very near future. But I certainly wanted to mention it. But if there's something that is really, you have a question right now, you can email examinations@cfpboard.org, or you could call the number that I've got listed there. So I want to talk finally about a couple of research studies, and I'm really hoping that some of you will be able to participate in this. The first one is the CFP Board Kansas State University study, and it's a perception study that's based upon the research study that Dr. Tom Warschauer and I did that looked at graduates of degree programs. We're doing a separate study right now of certificate programs, which is focused more on retention. But for this study, we're looking at on the degree side, and that is essentially taking the data that you're going to get tomorrow, but it's a qualitative study where we're actually asking these graduates what their perceptions of why they haven't continued or why they have continued with certification and whatnot. So we're specifically looking for some degree programs to step forward here. We need probably about 10 more participants. And you can see the categories there that we're looking for. But essentially, if you've got students that you think or graduates that would fit this, we would certainly like to engage them. And you see Dr. Christy Archuleta, associate professor at Kansas State University, and her contact information. And I'm really hoping that our degree programs can step up and participate. We will present the findings of this study at the conference. Obviously, anonymity will be very important, not only with regard to the individual participants. It certainly this is an IRB-approved study at Kansas State. But most importantly, as you are getting this data tomorrow, this is the next question, which is why, right? And so it would be in everyone's best interest to have a really nice sample of participants to get their data in the study. So I'm really hoping that that you all will step forward there. Second one is essentially firm relations is interested in learning more about potential partnerships between firms and CFP Board-Registered Programs. So what this is we're just trying to get a better sense, and I have a pretty good sense engaging all of you, but we don't have a complete picture of what some of the partnerships look like between our programs and firms. And so Joe Majeri's Director of Firm Relations is collecting some of this data, and what I'm asking for is for a few of you to contact him and say you'd be interested in speaking with him about it. It'd be a short phone conversation, and everything's anonymous. So this is just, it's not going to be something that we're going to send publicly to say that, you know, University X is getting this amount of money from firm Y. We're not going to do that. But what we're trying to do is help you all forge better relationships with firms that are going to be in everybody's best interest, and it'll be helpful for us to know kind of what's going on out there a little bit more comprehensively. So he'd like to speak with maybe 4 or 5 different institutions, and you have his email address and his phone number there. So I'm hoping that you'll reach out to him. So as I mentioned this already, I'll say it again. We're gonna break for questions in just a moment. But Faculty Career Center contacts, I mentioned that already. There's the email address. And for students to create a CFP board ID, it's the address right there. And you saw the Registered Programs webpage that I've had, I think, all over this presentation. So let's just take about 3 minutes. You can type in your questions, and I'm happy to answer them. So about a 3-minute break. Okay, so I just have one question here. Who should we contact to find out who's currently listed as the CEO and PD of our institution? There's been confusion in the past. Well, I mean, the confusion wouldn't come from us because we don't decide that. You all do in the documents that you send to us. We don't. I want to be clear about this. The people that are listed as the Chief Academic Officer and Program Director are the people who've been listed in the documents you've sent to us. You can email, for all of these questions, any questions you have, you should contact registeredprograms@cfpboard.org to see who you have listed. Given the fact that these reports are going to go out tomorrow, I'm not going to say it can't happen, but it'd be difficult to make a switch right away. Now, in all the communication regarding your renewals, if you look at your renewal letters that you've gotten from my department, those individuals are on the email list. So all the reviews have the program director and the chief academic officer as the recipient of those, and we follow those accordingly. We don't have, if you're someone else you want to put on there administratively, then you're welcome to do that. I certainly would caution some programs to be very very careful about who they're picking and be strategic, making sure it's a dean or department chair or whatnot. to make sure they're getting that information. We have another question here. Let's see. Our university recently became a registered program. We are currently working to develop an advisory board that will bring alums and other professionals who are in the industry together to help us. Okay. We don't really, I mean, I think, no, we don't. I mean, I think that, you know, so the question talks about, do we have a job description for advisory board members? And no, I mean, I think that gets too much into the weeds of what institutions do. We try to be very careful about that. I'd be happy to speak with you about ways of developing an advisory board. I help a lot of institutions in offering suggestions there, and we certainly suggest it, but we don't really get into having some sort of specific. It depends. You know, some of our programs, the way they're able to run an advisory board, if they're in the business school, they're allowed to have one CFP on the college-wide board, whereas others are allowed to have an advisory board specific to the program. Or if it's in family consumer sciences or continuing ed, it can have a very, very different feel. So, you know, feel free, if you want some help with that, email Pablo at registeredprograms@cfpboard.org, and we can set up a time to talk in the near or distant future about that. Well, thank you very much for attending, and I look forward to continuing to interact with everyone, and look forward to seeing you in person in August. Thanks again for attending, and we'll talk soon. Have a good day.